Or fishing work.
Okay. Right. Okay, well, welcome everyone to this hybrid Eastern Area Committee meeting. I want to welcome particularly any members of the public who are attending either in person or remotely, and any visiting members that we have in attendance. I would like to advise you that we've got the following officers from Swale Borough Council in attendance: the Director of Resources, Lisa Fillery, the Policy and Engagement Officer, Janet Dart, and the Active Travel Coordinator, Adrian Oliver. Could I quickly ask members of the Area Committee to introduce themselves? We'll start over on my left. So, Councillor Jackson, could you? Councillor Simmons.
Oh, yes. Councillor David Simmons, East Downs, which
Okay.
is villages for the south.
Okay, if we could go along the back road.
Councillor First Warden Courtney. Valentine, Portland, Courtney.
Mike Henderson, Barry Ward, Mr. Foster over there.
Ben Martin, Watling Ward.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to welcome other members from other councils. So I think we've got, oh no, we did have Councillor Lehman, he's left now. So I don't think we've got either of the county council members here. The other person we've got on the meeting is Adrian Berrant, who's on the meeting remotely, and he's a consultant working on the Town to Parishes project, which we've got a presentation on later. Could any representatives of parishes introduce themselves? Jeff, could you?
Check up and Dunkirk.
Yeah. Have we got any members of parishes here remotely?
Yes, hello. I'm Alan Stewart from Grave New and Goodnestone Parish Council.
Okay, thank you, Owen.
In the back row.
Okay,
Jeff Doddington Parish Council.
okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 1 is the emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. There's no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions, using the doors signed as fire escapes. And thankfully, there's one right there. And assemble outside where directed. Await instructions before re-entering the building. Should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please make our officers aware of any special needs so that suitable arrangements may be made in the event of an emergency. I think we're all okay with that. So, agenda item 2, apologies for absence, Janet.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Denise Knight, Councillor Hannah Perkin and Councillor Eddie Thomas. Has anybody had apologies to pass on from Councillor Bowen or Councillor Whiting? I can't see them. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, agenda item 4 is any declarations of interest. We are due to discuss some bids later, and I wanted to draw people's attention to the fact that one of the bids, the Faversham Umbrella one, is a partnership bid, in case you haven't read the papers very thoroughly. So you might want to be aware of those. There are various other organisations that are partners. Yeah.
So with the Faversham Umbrella, there's Age UK, West Faversham Community Association, Citizens Advice, FCS Talking Therapies, Face, Food Friends and Red Zebra. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Well, council and CIB action outcomes.
So
Okay.
sorry, can you just repeat those?
West Travis Community, where we are tonight.
Okay,
Well, and CAB, I'll call it.
thank you very
And
much.
GAS.
Thank you. Any others?
Fine. So, moving to agenda item 4, can I ask members to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2022 as a true record? Agreed. Okay, thank you, members. So, agenda item 5 is matters arising. This is this is a list of outstanding issues which have been raised at previous meetings of the committee and an update on the current state of play. So I think we probably need to go through each item in turn. So the first one is the bus consultation project. Are you going to speak to this briefly, Jen?
It's just really that this is the project that the area committee allocated funds to in March this year. The project has now commenced and the Economic Development Support Officer has provided a short update in the papers on where he's got to with the project. If anybody's got any questions, I can feed them back to him. Comments?
Doesn't look as though we've got any at the moment. So item 2 is flooding in the Whitstable Road area and other parts of Babisham, and there's a separate paper in relation to this. Well, as I wrote the letter, I might as well speak to this. So you've got an update from the head of Environment and Leisure on some works that are being done on the recreation ground to look at reducing any flood risk there. And you've also got some correspondence between me and Southern Water. And on the second page, you've got the response from Southern Water, which is, I think, fair to say, is fairly generic, and it's about things that they might do in the future. My understanding is that the chair is trying to arrange another meeting led by the MP with KCC and Southern Water, which should be looking at the Whitstable Road issues and some of the other flooding issues and sewage issues in the town. And I think there are and that would involve Southern Water and Kent County Council. I think there might also be discussions going on with Southern Water via the planning department that I'm not particularly up to. Is that right, Councillor Gould? Yeah. Fine. Yeah. So I'm not proposing that we do much more as a committee this evening, but I'm happy to take questions and comments. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, could I just bring up a very minor point, which kind of arises under flooding of a different type. There have been a number of complaints about the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, pedestrian part of the bridge, flooding in rain, and just for people's benefit, can I let them know that I've been in touch with Kent Highways, who have quite promptly, I must say, promised to essentially drill some holes in the hired bridge to get the water out. Quite whether they're allowed to do that, I'm not sure, but they're intending to. So in case anyone else has picked up, it is being done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. Okay, are you happy that we move on to the next item? So the next one is antisocial behaviour issues on new developments. I think there's a brief update here, isn't there, Janet?
Yes, so this was something that was brought up by a member of the public at the last meeting, where a particular area was having problems with antisocial behaviour. So this matter was reported to Steph Curtis, she's the officer, so what's the name of her team? Community Safety Unit, apologies. So she has been keeping an eye on that area with multi-agency approach, and has also said that it's important for any incident to be reported by the normal means, and the more reports that come in, then it's easier for the different agencies to plan a response. So the key is to get lots of information about it. But yes, that has been dealt with.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, I was gave the person who complained about its address and that's on home PSOs have done visit. She did give me her address, but don't pass on to you.
Right, okay, thank you. That sounds good. Item 4, fresh water leaks. I offered to write to South East Water. I have written to them and I've sent them a reminder, but they haven't replied, which is rather disappointing. So I will chase them up again. I think although some of the leaks that we were referring to last time have been resolved, there seem to be new ones appearing very frequently. Any questions or comments on that?
You mean fresh in the sense of new, fresh in the sense of drinking water?
Probably both, I should think. Okay, so that moves us to agenda item 6, which is about the Active Travel Fund tranche 4 funding, and Adrian Oliver is going to give us a presentation on this. So over to you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Are you using the big screen? Yeah, I'll try and move across a bit.
And anyway. You'll see that. Marvellous. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. My name is Adrian Oliver. I'm the Active Travel Coordinator for Swale Borough Council. And you may remember I was here in the summer talking about LC WIP for the whole borough and the activities that we were doing in terms of active travel throughout the borough. In those heady summer days where it was lovely and warm, Active Travel England also announced that they would be releasing Active Travel Fund Tranche 4 in September. The fund that they announced in July was a 3-year capital fund of £470 million and a 1-year revenue fund of £250 million. They said that the bidding period would start in September and finish on the 23rd of December. In August, Active Travel England sent every transport authority a self-assessment for Active Travel to see how they felt each transport authority was performing. And Kent completed this, and they assessed themselves as level 1. And in September, Active Travel England confirmed this level of level 1. The downside of this is that there are 5 levels, 4 down to 0, 4 being absolutely marvellous, doing everything possible to develop active travel routes and to promote active travel. 0, poor performance, poor political support, things taken out when put in, bad use of money, all sorts of things. Kent scored level 1, which was actually quite a popular level for shire counties. See, where we have multi-level councils, it's much harder to confirm political support. It's much harder to get things implemented on the ground. So level 1 was a popular area. The downside is that it makes it harder to qualify for funding. However, funding was released in September. This was the 250 million Capability and Ambition Fund, the revenue fund. We had 4 days to turn around a bid for Kent, and working with the chair and the vice chair of the Environment Committee, we developed a bid of £165,000. We've had a meeting last week about that fund. It looks like the allocation to Kent is much lower than everybody hoped, and consequently our allocation is being reduced as well. So unfortunately, things aren't going great in terms of bidding for large amounts of money. And back in September, we were expecting the capital fund to be released, but the hiatus in government meant that that was delayed. And it didn't appear in October, and it didn't appear in November. And we're sort of running out of time for it to appear in December now. So we're expecting it to be released in January, and we think there'll be an 8-week turnaround to develop bids. Thankfully, Kent has been incredibly sensible and has gone on with developing a bid for Active Travel Fund despite the fund not being released. So we have worked, Kent County Council has worked with the districts on developing on their plan proposals. We can do this because the information released in July about Active Travel Fund Tranche 4 is being used as guidance. So the guidance that was given back in July was build networks. It was so not just simple one scheme going from there to there, but something that connects to lots of other things too. To concentrate on conurbations. So concentrate on built up areas where you're going to get the most value for money for the infrastructure put in place. We would see a line with government priorities, and those hadn't been changed despite the changes in governments in recent months. They are the cost of living crisis, levelling up, and carbon reduction. Whatever is proposed in the bids has to be ambitious, has to be rebalancing our streets. That means taking space away from motor vehicles and giving more space to pedestrians and cyclists. And finally, it should be inclusive. So everybody should be able to use the facilities. In terms of cycling, that's anybody from the age of 8 to 80. And of course, as I mentioned in summer, we're in a new transport world. We have Gear Change that was published in 2020, which is a new strategy for cycling. We have new cycle infrastructure design guidelines that are very different from what went before. And we're expecting a new Manual for Streets 3 to be released anytime now. Again, there's some major changes in the way fundamental changes in the way of thinking about how we design our roads and use our roads in that. And you may have noticed that in the highway code, there's been some changes. So things like priority at junctions for pedestrians and the hierarchy of road users. So we now have a hierarchy of road users, which puts pedestrians at the very top, followed by cyclists and equestrians, and then motor vehicles and HGVs come at the bottom. So we've developed a bid that is focused on conurbation in Faversham here. And these are the sorts of the interventions we've looked at in the proposals. So we've got cycle lanes, and there's different variants of those. There's unprotected, there's low level segregation, and there's light segregation. There's one-way systems, there are filtering, and also we've looked at improving light performance so that releasing cyclists early to allow them to move on without the heavy traffic through a junction. And on the walking side of things, we've looked at improving the security of our footpaths, especially with improving lighting and visibility. We've got raised zebras included. This has the advantage of being a level surface for pedestrians, but also helping drivers to comply better with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit through the town. We have continuous footways across the front of junctions. This is an example on your top right of one in Sittingbourne. And we've also included ways of actually getting away from the up and down of pavements as they go across people's driveways, and introducing, that bottom right picture is one, it's called a Dutch entrance curb. So the pavement stays at one level, but the curb is the bit that dips down to the road level. And there's a map. This doesn't work, so bear with me whilst I change. Works on my screen, doesn't work. No. Okay, bear with me whilst I change. So all these interventions form a proposal that we put forward to Kent County Council. It's all very flexible at this stage. So what we've done is we've put all those proposals onto a Google map, and this allows you to zoom in and pick an item, say this one here, and it will tell you that that is a raised crossing, and it shows you exactly where it is and shows an example of a raised crossing. And you can zoom into, or in fact, zoom in and use. Anyway, the blue line is a network. It's actually a network for walking and cycling. In the LCWIP, they are two separate maps. We've actually combined them for this bid because we want to put in a combined bid, one proposal for Faversham. And we've also looked at how the network actually fits to the outer edges of the town. So it actually helps people coming from outside and the town into getting into the centre. What I'll do is I will put this, I will ask Janet to circulate the link for this map so you can all have a look. Please do feed back to me. The more information that you give me, the better this proposal will be. So, and any support is also greatly appreciated because Ken likes to see that as well. And that's me.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I'm going to open it for questions and comments, but could I just quickly ask about or could you explain a bit more about the relationship between the bid and the LCWIP, which is obviously something that.
Yes, so the bid is built on the LCWIP. So basically, we've taken all these interventions from the local cycling walking infrastructure plan and put them on here. We've the network is an approximation of what's in the LCWIP. It's driven by the LCWIP, but due to my lack of skills in Google Maps and the restrictions in Google Maps, it doesn't represent it exactly. Also, there are some interventions that we can't actually put into the bid. So there's a route, north-south route that goes from the Mall through the Preston Street. Because there is the underpass under the railway there with all the steps, we can't put that in the bid because that would raise a red flag to the funders because that's not accessible. It's not an accessible route to everybody. So instead of getting the red flag and potentially ruining the whole bid, we've just left that off. We have put the raised crossing at Forbes Road on the Mall, but it doesn't form part of the network. So there's some adjustments we've had to make to align the proposal with the bid.
Okay, thank you.
Veers a little bit away from me, I'll see what.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Can I just ask, are there lots and lots of these, all sorts of towns all around Kent?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh,
There's one of these for each of our major conurbations. So Persham, Sittingbourne, and then Peterborough, Sheerness, and Minster as one conurbation. There are over 100. Well, Kent started with over 100 proposals. They've reduced that to 60. They brought in a consultant now to up that number from 60 to 8. And we still haven't had the funds released yet, so we still don't know whether this whole process is still happening. But the conversations are continuing. We scored quite highly because we aligned everything we've proposed is aligned exactly with the guidelines. So you don't want to lose out because we've not followed the rules.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gould.
Do we know how much this intervention would be? Have you got a?
No, we haven't figured yet. Ken asked us to put an approximation, and the approximations were in brackets. So it was under 500,000, 500,000 to 1 million, and then 1 million to 1 million to 4 million. Each of the schemes that we've submitted are 1 to 4 million. But as I said, there is a long journey to go, as well as all the bids that are going into Kent. Once they get to Kent, they're going up to national level. And at national level, we start with a slight disadvantage because we are only a level 1 as a council. So we will be bidding against metropolitan areas who are more likely to get the funding in the first place because of their large conurbations, but also because they are generally scoring higher than a 1.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, come back in, Councillor Gould.
When you said you welcome support, what form did that take?
Letters of support, emails of support. To me.
To you, right.
It's not to massage my ego. It is the
Something that could be passed on.
something that we can pass on to Ken to say, yes, we've done all these presentations and this is what's some of the feedback we have had. So yeah, I mean, and actually the advantage of Ken going ahead with the whole process, despite the funds not being, the bidding process not being opened up yet, means that we can have these meetings, we can talk to people, we can refine things and improve things by having these meetings. And I've done this all over the borough now.
Okay, great. I think we could probably move on to agenda item 6 because it's, oh, sorry, Councillor Martin.
I'm not throwing spanners in the works, I promise. I'm just looking there and I can see what I think is at F26 between Love Lane and going across the railway bridge included. Given that Network Rail have recently ruled out any changes to that bridge, how does that apply for accessibility?
That doesn't
remove it.
It doesn't actually apply. Well, we've actually started talking to Network Rail about 2025 to 2029 spending on that. And what we were keen to do with this particular bid was put it in the bid. It wouldn't be funded from Proactive Travel England because it's too big an item. But we put it in because we want to make sure that we've got that connection over to Love Lane for future developments to the, I don't know, is that west or east? East. Sorry, completely thrown there. So it's to make sure that everybody knows we're heading that way and want to make sure that we're encompassing that in our network. But you're right, it's not going to be functional in this bid, but there is a way of doing it without spending lots of money.
Okay, Councillor Gould, you wanted to come
I
back.
was wondering whether we had sort of anything about improvements that are coming alongside developments. I was thinking about the Devon crossing that's just gone in at the bottom of Love Lane. which is not in the right place in my view. It's a step back off the design line, and but that presumably was all designed and put in place. Yeah, probably was planned some time ago. Do we have any review process for things that are coming through to actually make sure that they are compatible with the current guidelines and compatible with the bid?
Yeah.
I think particularly about the lights that Love Lane.
Love Lane, yeah. It's the lights at Love Lane that has shown the flaw in the situation at the moment, because those plans are put in years ago and don't really meet the ambitions and the designs of that come forwards in the last 2 years. So we are absolutely reliant on the flexibility of the development, which is difficult. We are talking to Kent Highways about these interventions that are in the pipeline, and to make sure that we can, wherever possible, bring them up to a better standard, and particularly, you know, in terms of pedestrians. So making sure that pavements are more than 1.8 metre wide, making sure that we're using Dutch curves, making sure that we're using raised crossings wherever possible. So yeah, but it's difficult.
Councillor Martin, you wanted to come in?
Just on that particular one, because I know that one is written far too well. It also includes a zebra crossing on Whitstable Road at the junction with Jubilee Way, which I understand has been submitted to Kent Highways because of waiting approval of the lighting design, because Kent Highways don't have a lighting design. And myself and Councillor Thomas have been in discussions with the developer, the highways designer from the developer, and Kent County Council's Highway Department, trying to secure additional crossing points. There's basically an argument over where you put the crossing point. Is it safer to leave them where they are, or do you have to compulsory purchase land off the landowner opposite? That's where it gets difficult.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Martin. Okay, are we ready to move on to agenda item 7? I'll ask you to come back in on agenda item 7 in a bit, Adrian. So agenda item 7 is on the Town to Parishes project. You may remember that last year we agreed to fund a project looking at active travel links from Faversham to its neighbouring parishes and villages, and that's being delivered by the town council. And I know me and the chair felt it might be helpful, as we were having a session on active travel, to get an update on that project. So Adrian Berrant is going to be joining the meeting remotely. He's the consultant that's working for the town council developing the project. So Adrian, are you there?
I am here, and can you hear me adequately?
Can everyone hear Adrian? Yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to try and share my screen, and hopefully, does that appear, and can you see it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Because it looked perfect on my screen, but it may not be the same there. Okay, thank you very much.
Fine.
Thank you, Julian, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to have a quick run through where we've got to with the project. And I thought I actually hadn't talked to Adrian Oliver about what his presentation was going to be. I hope that this fits neatly with what he's been saying about the Active Travel Fund Tranche 4 and the ambitions there. I think it fits pretty well, I think. So you'll be aware of where the project started. It was really initiated because of the 20 mile an hour town-wide scheme, which has developed, as you heard from Adrian, into a local cycling and walking plan for Faversham. And as you said, we're waiting news on the funding for that. At the same time, Kent County Council is developing a county-wide LCWIP, or KCWIP as it's being called, which is a requirement of Active Travel England. And really, the parishes to town piece fits in between. And Adrian, you heard from Adrian about the importance of building networks. Well, this is what this is trying to do. This is trying to link up what the work that KCC is doing at a county level to what we're doing in Faversham. So 20 mile an hour scheme is in and confirmed. This is a simplified version of the map you've seen on the LCWIP interventions from Adrian. But what the LCWIP also identified was that there were desire lines not just within Faversham, but out towards the communities as well. And the red lines you can see on this map are those where we think there is likely to be most demand based upon a number of inputs to the local population and where they want to go and so on, so the trip attractors and so on. I mentioned the county-wide LCWIP. We had a meeting on that a couple of weeks ago where Kent started to describe what they were looking at. And really, they're looking at three things. One is to make sure that LCWIPs across the county are broadly similar in terms of how they look and feel. To make sure that any LCWIPs between different districts are joined up. And we had a meeting recently with people in Canterbury just to make sure that the Faversham one joined up to Canterbury, and then to think about the wider network connections across the county. Those are really the three objectives, and AECOM have been appointed to lead that work. This is what the current cycling network looks like in and around North and East of Kent. The blue lines are the on-road, and the orange or yellow lines are off-road. And it's the desire of Sustrans is to get most of that onto off-road rather than on-road. I'm not quite sure entirely how they're going to do that, but that's their aim anyway. And in terms of what that sort of longer-term interurban cycling network might look like as part of the KC-WIP, this is just a draft which we put forward to KCC to suggest routes north and south and east and west from Faversham. So you get quite a nice network linking Sittingbourne down to Canterbury and up to Whitstable, and then in the fullness of time down to Lenham and probably even Ashford. I would think with the advent of e-bikes, even Ashford is probably achievable. If you combine those two maps, you'll see where we currently are, and I've added the potential routes in red, so you can see that that's really the context of where the Parishes to Town project is, trying to help with those links. Adrian mentioned the standards for cycling designs, and basically the things got to be the coherent. So make sure that there are origins and destinations that people want, and it's all a really good consistent quality. You know, it's direct. Can we make sure that there are no deviations? You'll see on the previous map that there's lots of deviations there for the National Cycling Network. We need these to be much more direct in future. Make sure the perception of safety is important as well as the actuality. You know, make sure it's comfortable and smooth. There's lots and lots of cycling routes that you've just got to stop and start all the time, jump off pavements, onto pavements, and just generally hopeless. And make sure those routes are attractive as well. So those are the sorts of desired design outcomes in sort of technical jargon. Is it LTN 120 is the current design standard for that. So bearing in mind where we're looking at in the wider context and what we've done in Faversham so far, this is a sort of broad network which might be developed over time, and this is what we've been consulting on with various parishes to see what they think and where we think there's most likely to be most demand for building this out. And we've also built in, it's not just cycling, of course, it's walking and as well. And given that we know that a huge number of short distance trips are walked, you know, this is really important to make sure that that environment is good for people who want to walk. So basically we came down to sort of issues and options, thoughts for the project, and they really fall into two things. One is generic, you know, what type of use are we going to make of this network? Can it be accessible by all, as Adrian mentioned earlier? And how are we going to deliver it? Is it going to be a dedicated cycle route? Quite probably the best thing, but costly and complicated. Can you just actually reduce or remove the volume and speed of motor vehicles on our existing network? In some places that would be possible. Could we use existing bridleways? Maybe there might be one or two possible. Could you do some upgrades to make them suitable for bikes? And then you need to think about specifics. What are the local trip generators in Faversham and around? We've got the National Cycling Network Route 1, which goes from Dover to Inverness, comes through Faversham. Can that be rerouted to make sure that it's a much more direct and useful commuter route as well as a leisure route? And then you've got to think about obviously the housing developments in and around. On the northeast side, there may be well be an opportunity with the solar park there to build a better cycleway link out towards Whitstable, and then other local opportunities that arise. Maybe a funding opportunity arise with a particular object in mind, which could be factored into this. And basically, we thought about, having looked at the whole picture in and around Faversham. We came up with a series of priorities. Clearly, the larger populations, that's where you're going to get the most amount of walking and cycling from. How approximate is the community to Faversham? The nearer the community is, the more likely to walk or cycle. Is there actually local community demand? Some parish councils are very keen to engage, and others that maybe less interest. How deliverable are the routes? And in some cases, absolutely deliverable. In other cases, much more challenging. And also to fit in with, as I've said earlier, the KC whip and how is that route, albeit it may have less local demand, but actually it's a strategic route. I'm not going to go through this because it's far too small for you to see, but basically we've just done that prioritisation process for all of the communities around Faversham, and we just ranked them according to how against those different priorities. And what we've come up with really is that there are three places which are sort of based top priority for both walking and cycling. So that's Graveney and Goodnestone to the northeast. Because it's close and because it's part of NCN1. We've got Orr to the northwest, again, because there's quite a lot of people who live there. It's actually very close, and to Faversham. In fact, actually, as we've seen from Adrian's map, really integrates almost entirely with the Faversham LC whip. And then Painters Forstall on the southwest side, again, because there's quite a lot of support from the parish council there, and it's actually pretty close to parts of Faversham. So both for walking and cycling. For the cycling, it's clearly more of a challenge. For walking, it'd be more of a challenge to come from Bourton or Tenham, but there's absolutely possibilities for cycling because they're still pretty close to Faversham. Both of them on strategic routes, and we have engagement from the parish council, and actually they are deliverable. If maybe it might take a year or two, but those routes are in fact deliverable in one shape or another. I thought I'd just take you through what's just an example of what's happening in Bourton. It's quite by chance on Google Maps happens to be someone cycling down the street in Bourton, and actually it's not great for cycling through there, but it's not bad. The speeds are pretty low anyway, and having cycled up and down there, I didn't find it too much of a challenge. From Bourton to Brenley Corner, it's also not bad. It could be some upgrades and some TLC, some maybe one or two interventions needed, but by and large, it's not bad. Which is a different case when you get to Brenley Corner, of course. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here, and I don't know whether this has actually been changed now. This was when I cycled up there. This was still like this, but it may well have changed. But it's just really not great for cycling. Not least because it's not signposted anywhere. The one place you're supposed to go, it actually says no cycling. But that is actually the best route. And if you're really clever, you can see that there is a sign there. And of course, once you get to Brenley Corner, it's a convoluted route. You have to cross two fast-moving it's a dual carriageway, and you have to wait. When I cycled across there, it was you had to wait a long time to cross on those two lights. So that certainly doesn't meet LTM 120 standards. From Brenley Corner through to Faversham, actually there are a number of options, and these are the sorts of options which we need to explore further with Bourton Parish Council. And you can see there are various routes that go parallel with the A2, with Watling Street. There's also the possibility of maybe upgrading the footpath that goes north of there in parallel. You can see that at the top here. An advantage of that is it fits in quite nicely with the new developments along there. Of course, you'd have to do something about the route across the fields from Homestall Lane, and taking your life in your hands. I've often wondered what trying to cross the A299. I often wonder why these barriers are like this. But of course, it's because it's a footpath across there, believe it or not. So you have to. So that's why they've broken the barriers. But I doubt there are huge numbers of people trying to walk across there at the moment, and no wonder, because it's just full of danger. The feedback we've got so far from talking to parish councils, really, it can be summed up in this came from one of the parish councillors, who basically said, look, there are too large vehicles travelling too fast around our country lanes, and actually it just makes us fearful, whether we want to walk along there or ride a horse or use a bike. So something is clearly needed to be done for these communities. And I talked about generic and specific stuff earlier in terms of how we approached it. Well, actually, the next steps fall into these categories. The generic stuff, integrating all this work with the KC Whip, and I'm in the process of doing that. Maybe a lower speed limits across all the rural areas. You may be aware that Surrey has recently reduced all of its speed limits on its rural lanes, so there's no longer you no longer turn off a 50-mile-an-hour main road onto a 60-mile-an-hour rural lane. Those have been reduced to 40 and 30 across the piece, and actually 20 miles now in some villages. Is there a possibility of reawakening the Quiet Lanes or Quiet Ways project? That seems to be gaining more traction again in places like Cornwall, around Truro. So there may be some opportunities for there. And again, I mentioned tactical opportunities earlier. Well, maybe there's some rural funds opportunities as that Adrian may have some more details on. In terms of specifics, the next steps really are about, if we talk about Graveney, I think for the moment, Sustrans are doing a study on a feasibility study for the Solarway between the Sportsman and Graveney, and that should be out in January. So I think we need to wait for that. As far as Aura is concerned, I think that is close enough to Faversham to really probably be integrated with the Faversham LC Whip, as we've seen from Adrian's earlier comments. In terms of Pater's Forstal and Bourton under Blean, I'm due to have further discussions with both parish councils there to see how we can to make sure we've identified all the measures which are needed to make those active travel corridors work. And for Tenham, Adrian can probably give further details on this, but there's a bid has gone into Sustrans for a feasibility study for the Tenham link, and again we're awaiting the outcome of whether we've been successful in that bid or not. And I guess the final next step is to really finalise this report, which I can to present back to you on the summary of the work done so far. Thank you very much, and I hope you could hear it. I hope you could hear me, and I hope you could see what I was talking about. If I can, I'll happy to send the slides around anyway afterwards if that would help.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. I think that was very clear from where I was sat, and I think everyone else could hear as well. So, have we got any comments or questions at all on that? update presentation.
Chairman, yes.
Yeah.
Adrian, I don't know if you can hear me, but we had a JTB recently. We had a presentation about quiet lanes, and I was rather disappointed by the KCC officer who said that one of the things you couldn't do is put a quiet lane in a rat run, and unfortunately, a lot of rural lanes are rat runs. And it seemed to be rather disappointing.
Do you want to comment on that, Adrian?
Well, first of all, I'm not a quiet lane expert, but I thought that was the whole point. It seems to be that seems to be a bit upside down to me, and I thought that the whole point of trying to make places quiet lanes was to actually eliminate the rat running which is going on.
Can I just come back?
Yeah, of course.
Another question. You said that in Surrey, the rural lanes have had their speed limits reduced. Does that mean that at the beginning of every rural lane, there's a speed limit, there's a speed sign, the countryside is littered with signposts?
Littered. Well, at the moment they have a national speed limit sign on them. So what they've done is, where possible, they've just used the existing poles. And instead of being a national speed limit, it'll now say 40 or 30 or what the appropriate limit is. So I know that they've minimised the amount of signage which they've used.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before I go back to Adrian here, perhaps to sum up or to comment on the fit of the towns parishes project with the work you're doing? That might be helpful to round up the session. Yes, Adrian. So would you like to do that? And then we'll move on.
So Adrian and I, so two Adrians, work closely together because Adrian's work is impacting directly on the Swale Borough-wide LC WIP. And he's been brilliant going around and talking to the parish councils in the eastern area, so that has made my life a lot easier. So we were talking about the Active Travel Fund bid earlier and how that we built that network. So actually, it then automatically plugs into the towns to parishes routes that then come into Faversham. So working together, we managed to sort of expand those things. I think Aidan mentioned funding for rural areas. So there was a Rural England Prosperity Fund announced a little back in September. And we've looked at, it's a capital fund, so but it's not big enough to do very much infrastructure work. So we've looked at ways that we can perhaps the quiet ways or quiet lanes thesis into a network, tying in obviously the PROs as well. And I'll be interested to talk to that officer at KCC, because you're absolutely right. One of the key points about quiet lanes is to reduce through traffic. But it mustn't be the only thing. Quiet lanes often fail because the only thing it's trying to achieve is stop the rat run. However, if you approach it from a more positive point of view of helping the local community be connected with places they want to go, or even safe walking the dog, or actually improve the visitor experience, then that's a better positive message than just saying it's about cutting the rat running. So with the Rural England Fund, we've looked at potentially developing some networks that would make it easier for people to use the country lanes without having to drive. So that's the key area. I think that's really it for the moment.
Okay.
That's okay.
No, that's good. So Can I, well, thank you to Adrian's for the items. Thanks very much, Adrian Berrant. That was a very helpful kind of overview, and it's good to have feedback on one of the projects that the committee's funded. And we hope there are positive developments, Adrian Oliver, from the work you're doing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I'm going to move us now on to agenda item 8, which is the public forum. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask any questions they've got, or to suggest potentially suggest agenda items for future meetings. So I don't know if we've got members of the public here who would like to speak or ask questions. Okay, I'm going to move on then to agenda item 9, which is an opportunity for members of the committee to raise any issues on behalf of local residents or local communities that they think need to be raised. Committee, Councillor Jackson.
Approached by a resident how the road by the Elms Houses that goes down the Hosbury Street, the HGVs are going up there and they can't get under the bridge. And they say the signage isn't clear enough for them to see as they come out Stone Street. And then they have to back, so there's no way that you can turn around. So is there anything that we can do about this resident and residents of Hosbury Street?
I mean, I would have thought going back to KCC about this would be, in that it's a thing about highways would be the best thing to do. And I would have thought as board councillors we could probably write that would be the best thing to do. I don't know if any other members have got any thoughts on this. Sorry, Adrian, about the bridge. Yeah.
Because they will advise KCC of where to put the signage. Because the last thing they want is anything hitting that bridge.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from or questions from members? Okay, I'm going to move us on to agenda item 10, which is entitled Update on the Work Plan. But I think as you will have seen reading the paper, it's largely about the allocation of the remaining funding that the committee's got. So I'm going to ask Janet to introduce this, and then we can decide how to move forward with it.
Okay, so on page 13 of the agenda pack is a cover report. Just to summarise the background, Eastern Area Committee were allocated £40,000 for this financial year, 2022-23, and at the September meeting, £27,237 of funding was allocated, leaving £12,763 available to allocate. The area committee at the September meeting decided how they wanted to deal with that remaining funding, and they wanted to run a second round and for the focus to be on cost of living. And they set specific criteria relating to that. So we ran the second bid, and that closed on 3rd of November. And £36,893 of bids were received for projects that all complied with the criteria that had been set. So it was very much oversubscribed by 24,130. So the process that's carried out by officers is once all the applications have been checked to make sure that they're eligible, a scoring process then takes place against the criteria. And that's carried out by 3 independent officers, impartial officers, and their scores are all added together, and you'll see the totals are set out on page 17. What happens next is then using those scores, officers then put together proposals for the committee to consider and vote on this evening on how to allocate the money. I think that's probably it for me. I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, can you just clarify for us, Janet, that if providing we stick to choosing between the 4 options, anyone with a possible interest will still be able to take part in the debate?
That's correct. So if the vote takes place on any of the options, the 4 options that are set out in the report, then no one will have to recuse themselves from the vote. However, if an amendment to any of these is made, then if you believe that that the wording is under the declarations of interest is if a fair-minded and informed observer would think that there was a real possibility that a member might be biased or predetermined on that item, then the member should declare this and leave the room while the item is considered. So just reminding you about the declarations of interest on this item.
Okay, thank you. I mean, last time we went through a similar process, we had a bit of a discussion to get a feel for what people might think, and then we moved to a proposal. I'm hoping we might be able to do that again. But Councillor Henderson, you wanted to come in.
Well, I was going to look at it in a slightly different way and say, would it be helpful to make a proposal and see whether people would talk to that, and if it's clearly unwelcome, then it could be dropped and no proposal put forward, or if it's welcome, it could be agreed.
Okay. I think my slight preference would be to try and get a bit of a feel for, if you're happy with that.
Okay.
If you were happy to say what you were thinking the proposal might be.
May I simply call it a suggestion at this point? I would like to suggest that it would be the best option to seek, let me get this right, option 2, which is to take the 3 highest scoring bids and share the money out so that those 3 bids, I think, got about 51% of what they've asked for. And I say that for some positive and some negative reasons. On the positive side, I think option 4 is a non-starter. We've invited people to bid for the money and then to turn it down and say we're not going to give it to anybody. Seems not very sensible. I suggest that option 2 positively is better than option 1, purely because if you look at the marking of the options, the difference between the top 2 and the 3rd is only 1 mark out of 24. So they are terribly close together. And there is then a significant gap down to 20 for the other ones. And therefore to include the 3rd option, I think, is sensible. And I suggest on a negative basis that option 3 is probably not advisable because you run, in my view, a very substantial risk. We're going to give everybody about 1/3 of what they ask for. And I think that raises a significant danger that at least some of the proposals would be unable to be implemented in the way that people have bid for. So I picked up those reasons for why I am at this point suggesting that we might wish to go for option 2.
Okay, thank you, councillor Henderson. Councillor Gould.
I was going to suggest option 3 actually would be
Right.
the best. Certainly having discussed discussions that all about the council recently, which aren't they put forward their own proposals for some similar amount of funding to the funds that are actually allocated to some of the smaller bids here, and feel they can do something useful with it. I think the other thing is on the scoring, the thing that really marks all these smaller bids down is their geographical spread, because they don't cover the entire town, but almost by definition, if you've got a tenant-based one or a Petersfield-based one, they will not get the full geographical spread, and therefore anything that is for those more isolated or further out communities will automatically be marked down regardless of the merits of the otherwise. And in fact, if you look at the scoring system, it is that geographical spread that really actually disadvantages them. And I think actually we need to maybe think about that when it comes to, otherwise there's that, urban centric effect on the bids. So I think for both of those people, I would be in favour of voting for option 3. They can do useful things for those not money.
Okay, thanks, councillor Gould. Janet, did you get some? I understood you might have got some feedback from organisations about if we did give lesser amounts of money, whether they'd be generally able to spend that money.
So when we saw how many bids that have come in, the value of the bids and how much they were oversubscribed, I got in touch with all of the bidders and just asked them the question: if they were to receive a smaller amount than they had asked for, how would it affect their projects? Majority have come back to me and they've said that they would have to scale down, do a combination of things. They'd either have to scale down their project. So with some of them say where it's a warm space that they were going to have open for so many months, they may have to reduce the amount of time that their project runs for. And also they would seek funding from other sources as well. None of them have said we wouldn't be able to run the project at all. Although saying that I haven't heard back from, I think 2 of them. But that information may assist you with considerations.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Like Councillor Gould, I favour option 3. I think we asked organisations, we set quite a challenging criteria. In other words, we asked them to think about ways of addressing the cost of living crisis. And I think reading all the submissions, I got the impression that their submissions were flexible enough, in other words, so that they could do something with less money. And it just seems to me to be more equitable and fairer to spread the money out. Okay, so there's a risk that a project might not succeed, but by and large, I think that they're all organisations who could apply for grants elsewhere to top it up, and the programmes that they put forward all look to me to be flexible enough. So that's where I would go.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Simmons. Does anyone else want to come in? It looks as though we're leaning towards option 3 at the moment. To come back in, Councillor Henderson.
Could I just add in that the only point that worried me in this debate is the one which essentially says, quite specifically, one member said, option 3 is better because the scoring is unfair. But was this committee that agreed the basis of the scoring? So I think we have to be a shade careful on that. But could I suggest then, Mr. Chairman, it seems clear that neither option 1 nor option 4 is being promoted at all. Could I request perhaps therefore that the simplest way of doing this is to have a vote as between options 2 and 3, and take the majority view.
Is that allowed? Does anyone object to that? No. Okay, let's do that then. So,
We got into a terrible trouble like the one time previously where I think we ended up with 3 proposals on the table and
yeah, no, I think
couldn't deal with all of them.
yeah, we're in a better position tonight, I think. So I think everyone should be clear on that then. So can I ask members who are in favour of option 2 to show? And members who are in favour of option 3 to show?
That's fine. So that's carried at option 3.
Seems very clear, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay. And I think we will get some good value out of that approach. Okay, thank you. So I don't think the final 2 items should detain us very long. So agenda item 11 is matters referred to the area committee by service committees. Do we have any?
No, there's no items in this meeting.
Right. And item 12 is matters referred to service committee chairs for consideration. Do we have any items there?
That's if the committee have anything that they
I don't think we brought up any that needed to go off to service chairs this evening. Okay. So I think that's the end of the meeting. So I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance. Stay and not too cold a journey home. Thanks, Alison.
Yeah.
Brilliant.